Hey, it's Jordan, and delighted to be joined by Jennifer Perlman down in South Florida. Glad to see you all. Well, you are doing well, and the hurricane hasn't decimated this part of Florida like others. Big announcement, even though you're not like officially launching with rallies and things like that for a little while. You are launching to the public an important campaign today. So let's hear who you're running against, what are you running for, and why.
I am challenging Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the Democratic primary in Florida's 23rd district, primarily because I have been a very unhappy constituent of hers for the past 15 years. And we are on a campaign to get the corporate money out of our district and return power to the people who live here.
And for those progressives, obviously Bernie was the big national movement in 2016, but there was a lot of interest. At that time, law professor Tim Canova was running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Lost by 12 points, so could have been a lot worse considering Debbie Wasserman Schultz has been in there for a long time. And obviously she was kind of disgraced with everything that happened with the 2016 rigging. She kind of got moved to the backbench of the party, but she's still very prevalent in the party. Before we get to your strategy against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I want to draw a contrast. She has been basically, hand over fist taking money from the special interest. Your backstory is a lot of working with people who don't have a lot of resources, people, impoverished people, the most vulnerable, as an attorney.
Yeah, that's what I'm currently doing right now, is being pro bono of counsel for an organization that does post-conviction work. So everything from early termination of probation to helping people figure out what they still owe, helping people figure out how to get back into society, and people having to get fixed up with different local organizations to help them sort of get back in to civilization.
And when you talk about being, you're running because of you've been an unhappy constituent. Can you kind of talk about that? Because when I think of the 23rd district there, right or wrong, I think generally, some wealthier folks, heavy Jewish population, they definitely know and are comfortable with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But there's also a lot of people not, and a lot of people, both Latino and lower income in that district.
Yeah, our district is really kind of interesting because while it's completely gerrymandered and blue to the point where it's always a Democrat that's going to win this district, it's much more of an establishment Democrat blue than a progressive blue down here. And so even though someone like Debbie was, as you said, disgraced and had to step down from the DNC, they still elected her here. So it's really a certain amount of comfort level. I do think that there is a Jewish tribal factor to somewhat in this district that, really works. We've always known that in this district growing up. Broward County, Jewish surnames do well in elections. It's, and just like in Miami-Dade, Hispanic names do well in elections. It's just, it's unfortunate, but that's the case. So as a constituent of hers, I have just been watching her been taking money from all the wrong people and doing all the wrong things. And it's really, 2016 was, as much as everyone else was still happy with her after that, I was just beyond disgusted. And that was the final straw. And I was a volunteer for Tim in 16, and I really saw how that campaign went down and how she was with that, and it really was just even more so infuriating that she's just so entitled to be sitting where she's sitting. So it's a combination of wanting to get the corporate money out and really just thinking that she needs to move on now.
And can you kind of talk about your policy proposals, very progressive, Medicare for all, free public college, things like that. But Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as far as I know, has been against marijuana legalization, even for medicinal purposes. She's kind of wavered on that. That's one of the policy proposals you're proposing. Talk about what you're proposing in contrast to her record.
Well, primarily, I want to just say that, like, for me, the bigger issue on a federal level is decriminalization versus what we're talking about, legalization, which is much more of a state function. Right now in the state of Florida, for example, we have 2 pending pieces of legislation to legalize recreational marijuana. But on a federal level, what needs to happen is it needs to be declassified as a Schedule I drug. And really, that's the extent of it in a federal level, and plus, commuting sentences and releasing people that are in federal incarceration based on nonviolent drug offenses. But as far as I know about her, last I had heard, when they were pushing for medicinal here, her attitude was she wasn't for it. She still was calling marijuana a gateway drug. And at one point, I think she sort of leaned and said, okay, I guess for veterans suffering from PTSD, I guess, then it's okay. But I have not heard her support the concept of decriminalization in any manner.
And could that have anything to do with all the banks she takes money from that are invested heavily in pharmaceutical companies?
Well, that, and I also think alcohol. She takes money from alcohol industry. So, to me, that's just common sense. So, you can't ever say why someone votes or does what they do, but the appearance of impropriety when you're taking money just leaves it too open to possibility. It's just not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. So. Also, obviously, Broward, South Florida, in the eye of the storm, no pun intended, of the climate crisis. Some experts talk about Miami in the next decade or two being underwater. What is your thoughts on immediate action? Because Debbie Wasserman Schultz, honestly, she talks the talk, but I don't really know what aggressive. She's not for the Green New Deal, as far as I know. What is your contrast there?
I definitely support the Green New Deal. I don't understand how anybody doesn't support it. It's not even a specific policy. Why would you not support being as ambitious as possible? And truthfully, it's probably not even ambitious enough. My last seeing sightings of her on the whole climate policy was she wouldn't even agree that fracking should be banned. I haven't heard her say anything really on this. She did make some comment. We're having a current situation where this private company wants to drill just west of Miramar, which is, that basically is where the 2 canals intersect between Broward and Dade's drinking water. And there's a company that wants to drill there. And she did say that she didn't support that. So, but she definitely has not taken any sort of leadership roles in doing anything, being that we are in South Florida. I've never heard of her being, starting up a solar initiative, or I've never seen her initiate or start anything in this. Yeah.
And could you kind of talk about in that district, because there's other districts like this in parts of New York, Connecticut, that kind of have, little older money, older people, and it's that familiarity. They don't even know as much what her voting record is, what she does, but it's like, oh, it's Debbie. How do you break through on those people? Because frankly, you do need to pluck some of those people. Is it a strategy of, think of your grandchildren, whether it be climate change, the healthcare crisis? How do you plan on, canvassing to attract some of those voters?
Well, first of all, I think my demographic is going to automatically be more appealing to voters than, say, somebody who is an outsider, being that I was born here and I'm a second-generation Jewish Floridian. Mm-hmm. So there is a comfort level. She and I are maybe 1 or 2 people removed in the community. There's a lot of mutual friends. I'm active in the Jewish Community Center. And so, there's a lot of people that might have had that familiarity, but they don't necessarily feel unfamiliar to someone like me. And the issues down here, it's really interesting because the older people, obviously, they are not really that interested in Medicare for all. For the most part, the older people in the older communities have an attitude of, well, I got mine and I had to work for mine and I had to wait for mine, and it's not a priority for them. It isn't. But I have found that talking to people about what's going on with the environment in terms of the world for their grandchildren, that is a little bit more appealing in terms of, getting through to people any sort of progressive message. But our district is a very interesting anomaly, and by design. It was gerrymandered that way on purpose. Mm-hmm. So,
and do you draw any lessons, inspiration from any national figures, whether it be Bernie, AOC? Whom do you kind of not like mirror yourself in, but who do you kind of take some political oxygen from?
Okay, for a manner of like temperament and personality, I would say more Tulsi. Not necessarily saying in terms of policy, but just in terms of how she presents herself and how she how she calls people on what they need to be called on, and I appreciate that. And I took notice of her in 2016 when she stepped down from working with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I always sort of kept that in mind as a real sign of integrity, because I don't know that anyone else would have done that. I haven't seen any other figures in her position that have really stood up. I don't recall. I think there was one other person that endorsed Bernie that was in the House at the time. But yeah, I mean, so I find her to have, to me, an amazing level of integrity. So I appreciate that about her. Policy-wise, I'm probably more in line with Bernie, I would say. Personally, I'm probably somewhere between Bernie and Mike Gravel, but you know, I always say that it's really not a matter of what I think, it's a matter of what the majority of the district wants. Fortunately, we are a blue district, so I can say comfortably that it would not be difficult to represent this district in that way. But it would really be up to everybody who lives here.
And one of your proposals, which is growing in popularity, is shutting down these for-profit prisons. To my knowledge, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has benefited from those for-profit prisons. Can you kind of talk about how you would kind of galvanize enthusiasm in the district there to close down those for-profit prisons?
I don't even think it requires that much to get people interested in that. Every person that I've ever spoken to down here, now granted, I'm in a criminal justice community in terms of the people that I work with, so they're pretty aware people, but most people, once they hear that there even are for-profit prisons, they just never knew. I don't know anybody who's in favor of it, so I actually don't think that's remotely a hard sell. I think it's easy. I mean, on a local level, Debbie did try to have one, or agreed to have one, built in Southwest Ranches, which is really part of Davie, which is where I live, and a bunch of local people stood up and were like, no, we don't want that here. And so, you know, she backed off. I don't know who she's taking money from regarding that anymore, or what the benefit is for her to have that here. I don't know. But anybody who hears about for-profit prisons is generally repulsed by it.
And I'm interested down there because obviously it's a local race, but Florida in general, it seems to be like this purple state that kind of goes both ways, but like a Trump mini-me won the governor there. Yeah, he's been a little better than a lot of progressives were scared with Governor DeSantis there. He's done some good things from what I hear. But what is the climate overall? I know you're running in a district, but do you think that there's more progressive pockets maybe down there than one would think of? Progressive, not like establishment Democrat, or is the state and therefore some of the districts moving more towards that Trump-style conservatism?
I think that I'm a lifelong Floridian, so I've seen, I mean, I think I remember Jimmy Carter at one point won an election and won Florida, and we were like floored by that. But so no, Florida is red. Florida is red. There's no doubt about it. And even like I was saying, down here where we're blue, it is much more of an establishment blue. But I will say that there are pockets of progressive people here that are trying to make inroads into that. I mean, I'm a member of the Progressive Caucus, so there's, and yes, it's not the biggest caucus of the Broward Democratic Party, but there is an interest in moving to the left that I have noticed. But more than anything, it's not even a right-left as much as it's a corporate, non-corporate, or a corrupt and anti-corruption. I've been attending Republican meetings down here, and we have a lot of common ground. I mean, for example, they like that I support term limits. So, there's just certain things. There's this sort of anti-corruption vibe that has been stirred up, I think, over the past few years, where people are starting to realize that the people who are taking money from nefarious corporate sources are not working in their best interest. And so I think that is really more of the pull than whether it's left or right down here, because people are starting to, get, tuned into that.
Mm-hmm. And also, when you're talking about nefarious sources, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has really been gifted a lot of money from the payday lending industry, which, to my knowledge, she still does. That obviously, is predatory towards low-income people. One of your proposals is to curb that.
Well, yeah, I actually support the recent plan that Bernie and AOC, I think that they said cap it at 15%, I think is what I just saw that, right? Wasn't that what it was? 15%. Yeah, that sounds, that's reasonable to me. There's a lot of things that would be reasonable to me, but it's out of control now. It's just, it's so usury. And it's funny because down here in Florida, we're very aware of this price gouging thing, because after a storm, you would see people charging $100 for a bag of ice. And so it's this concept of gouging that it's really disgusting. So anything that curbs that is something that I'm in favor of.
And are you prepared if you are running? Obviously, even after she was disgraced, you had the Obama machine come down there in 2016 for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I assume if you run, credible competitive race, you will have, the establishment is striking back nationally. They're dragging Joe Biden's, politically lifeless body to the finish line.
It's like the weekend at Bernie's.
Right. I would expect you're not just going to be running, against Wasserman Schultz and her people, but, the national infrastructure. What have you prepared for that mentally?
You know what? I've been sort of wondering myself who's going to come down and stump for her down here. I've been wondering that. Is it going to be Nancy Pelosi? Is it going? I really don't know. And I'm racking my brain to think who is going to come down here that is so favorable and loved right now that it's going to really, be such a big bonus for her. And I really can't think of anybody. And I think that whoever it is will come down into their own little Democratic establishment echo chamber, and that'll be that. But as far as like really drawing anybody in any, I don't see it. I don't see anybody that's that popular right now.
And also, I want to kind of like drop the curtain a little bit, because the times I've been in Florida, for people that don't live in Florida, or maybe people that do, can you kind of explain, like, a lot of things in Florida a lot of things politically run through Debbie Wasserman Schultz, has been my understanding. She has an incredible, even after she was no longer DNC, incredible impact on what actually moves as far as progress down there and what doesn't.
To me, look, I've been sort of working in these circles for a while, and what I have noticed is there is a certain fear factor. People are afraid because of a certain amount of power, especially somebody who sits on an appropriations committee and gets to decide certain municipalities what they can and cannot have. So no, there's definitely people that are scared and they just won't speak up against the establishment. You're not going to have that. But I don't see her as much as really having. It doesn't seem like real power to me. It seems like, yes, there's this core group of the Democratic establishment, and I think they're fearful of her, and I think that there's a certain amount of control that she still has, especially in Broward County at the local level. The Dem clubs and they definitely are in her corner. But I really don't know how far that goes. I've been saying I really feel like they're paper tigers. I don't know. But once you leave a Dem club and you go out into the universe and talk to anybody else, they don't even know they don't even know what's going on. I don't know who. It's a very small group of people. That's what it appears to me.
And finally, I'm not, doing PR for you, but let's face it, you're going to be outmatched financially. That's for sure. Yeah. I kind of snuck into one of her fundraisers in 2016, which, no offense to my older friends in Florida, but was a bit of a Golden Girls episode. I think I was the youngest person there by like 30, 40 years. Anyway, but, she's going to be doing her little ice cream socials and other lavish fundraisers, and you're not taking that corporate money. So what's your plan? Just kind of old-fashioned asking people, whatever you could give, kind of grassroots fundraisers? How do you plan on competing with that?
We have a combination of different things going on. Some traditional type of fundraising, like, we're dialing for dollars, and we're only taking from individuals, obviously no corporate PACs. But, and I'm not at all going to worry about what she makes. And I've told people very clearly, I don't want to know what she's making. I don't want to know it doesn't matter to me. All that matters is that we raise what we need to get the message out that we want to get out. She can outraise me 10 to 1. If I'm able to do what I need to do, then that shouldn't matter. But yeah, it's a combination of things. Hopefully there will be some people that'll host some higher end fundraisers and some people that are going to be able to max, and that would be nice. But ultimately, it's going to be mostly small dollar donations. We'd love to get $23 a month for District 23. And I'm really reaching out to a lot of the Bernie groups, because I know there's definitely motivation on their part to unseat Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So Even if all of Bernie's volunteers donated $1 a month, we probably would be able to outspend her.
Right. And lastly, when you look at the national election right now, which, in 2016, there was definitely some connections and similarities to Florida 23 between Bernie versus Hillary. What are you seeing? Because it seems to me, if 2016 was a media campaign against progressives, that was child's play compared to what's going on right now. I've never seen anything like it. And it really seems like even in efforts to prop up other candidates and for example, the media kind of propping up Warren as a way to, take the wind out of Bernie's sails. What's your thoughts on the overall process right now?
Well, I've thought from the beginning that the goal is to beat Bernie, not to beat Trump. I think that they proved that in 16, that's clearly, they can say what they want to say, but actions speak louder than words. So they know, look, if I'm aware of something, then that means they're aware of something. So, I think that they see Warren as the best opportunity to pull voters from Bernie, I guess, is in the established. She's probably the closest of the establishment Dems to that. And she's definitely smart on policy. I'm not completely averse to her. I wouldn't say I'm like a fan or anything, but she doesn't, she doesn't offend me in any way. She's fine. But the rest of them, I just don't understand what they're doing other than trying to just take votes from Bernie. I just, that's what it is to me. It's just a circus of people trying to beat Bernie.
And I lied, one more. Like nationally, the local media there in Florida, South Florida, pretty friendly to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I would say. Do you expect much coverage? Plan on really hitting social media, those kinds of things, to get that message out?
Yeah, we could sort of hope for the best with local media, but I'm a little bit too aware from working on Tim's campaign how that goes down here. So, no, I think we're just going to be doing our whole own thing. We have a lot of non-conventional things that are planned for, after our launch, and things that involve small businesses in the community. We want to promote small businesses. We want to promote local organizations. Once we get going, we're going to do weekly volunteer gigs at different organizations here. So it's going to be more about us going out into the community and saying, okay, how can we help you? What do you need? And just start doing the job that needs to be done. And, I think that when you put enough out there, it'll start to take hold. It'll get coverage. And I, as far as the traditional media, probably not. But we on social media, we're at all the places that we need to be. And I can hope that the young people who know how to do that are doing that really well for me, because I don't know how to do most of the stuff.
Speaking of, where can people find out more about you, your campaign? Okay,
our webpage is www.gen2020.com. And then we are on Instagram and Twitter at JenFL23. And then we have a Gen 2020 Facebook page. And I think that's it. All
right. Thank you, Janet Perlman. I'm sure we're going to be talking quite a bit as this goes forward. I would say Debbie Wasserman Schultz politically is definitely a ongoingly loathed figure among progressives, which automatically brings more eyeballs to you. So good luck to you.
Thank you. Are you going to come visit?
Yes.
Okay.
Just I'm not going to run next time. I blew up my back.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Take care of yourself.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com, where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.